what is the stroke volume? Is the volume of blood ejected by the ventricle on each beat. That this is the volume, this goes to the aorta, and this is known as the stroke volume. The next is ejection fraction. Is the fraction of the end diastolic volume ejected in each stroke volume. Which is a measure of ventricular deficiency, ventricular efficiency. Means that this is a fraction of end diastolic volume ejected in each stroke volume. Means the volume which is ejected at each stroke volume, and it is known as the ventricular efficiency. That how efficiently it ejects the blood. So this is known as the ejection fraction. The next is cardiac output. Is the volume ejected by the ventricle per unit time. Basically, the stroke volume is the difference between the volume of blood in the ventricle before ejection and end diastolic volume. Is the difference of the volume of the blood in the ventricle before ejection and its before ejection, this is known as the end diastolic volume, and volume remaining in the ventricle after ejection. End diastolic volume and systolic volume. Stroke volume is 70 ml. Equal to end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume. And this is volume ejected on one beat. Volume in ventricle before ejection. Volume in ventricle after ejection. So if we study the total aspect, stroke volume is basically the, so what are the parts we have dealt? Stroke volume, it is the measure of the volume that is that is ejected from the left ventricle at on each beat, single beat. Ejection fraction is the fraction of the end diastolic volume and ejected at each volume, which is the, and it's the efficiency, means what is the leftover leftover blood in the after the stroke volume is known as the ejection. Cardiac output is the volume ejected by the ventricle per unit time, is the cardiac output. Stroke volume is the difference between the end diastolic volume and the end systolic volume. End diastolic volume and end systolic volume, volume in the ventricle before ejection and volume in the ventricle after ejection. So this is known as the stroke volume, and the measure is 70 ml. This is the cardiac cycle time. The heart contracts or beats about 70 times a minute, and each heartbeat lasts about 0.85 seconds. Arterial cycle ventricular arterial systole 0.1 second, arterial diastole 0.7 second, and this is 0.8 second. This is ventricular systole 0.3 second, and the ventricular diastole is 0.5 second. Completely it's 0.8 second. Since arterial and ventricular systole occurs independently their interval is also calculated separately. But the diastolic phase of 2 cycles up to 0.4 second occurs simultaneously. Therefore, the time intervals is taken once, called as joint diastole. So total it's arterial systole is 0.1 second, ventricular 0.3 second, and joint distance 0.4 second. So it's completely 0.8 second. So here we can see this is the cardiac cycle time. The heart contracts or beats about 70 to 72 times a minute, and each heartbeat is for 0.85 second. The complete heartbeat is of 0.85 second. It is divided into the two phases. The one is the arterial cycle, another is the ventricular cycle. In arterial systole means the systole is contraction when the artery is contract, so it is 0.1 second. And when the arterial relax, it is for 0.7 second. So total it is 0.8 second. Now what happens when the ventriculars contract? It's of the timing 0.3 seconds. And when ventricular relax, it's 0.5 seconds. Total it's 0.8 seconds. Since the arterial and the ventricular systoles, they occur independent of each other, means they are not occur simultaneously, their time interval is also calculated separately. Okay, so we can see the arterial and the ventricular systole, it is also independently, but the diastolic phase of the two cycles up to 0.4 second, diastolic phase of the two cycles up to 0.4 seconds occurs simultaneously. Therefore the time intervals is taken once called joint diastole. So it is occurs the diastolic phase of the relaxation phase, they occurs dependent on each other and they occur simultaneously. So the time interval is combined, and that is known as the joint diastole, and this is for 0.4 second. So this is for 0.1, 0.3, these are independent, and this is the 0.4. The total it is 0.8 seconds.